Mighty Ape is Australia's entertainment and pop culture superstore with everything from movies, music, games, toys, books, hobbies, and more. Mighty Ape is your one-stop shop for the things that matter most. They constantly have hot deals and exclusive promos. And if you visit their website on the click-through banner on fakechef.net's homepage, then your purchase will help support Good Movie Monday. Mighty Ape, Australia's entertainment and pop culture superstore.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
You mean to wish me a good morning, or do you mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not?
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God.
Push pops, slap bands, tribal prints, and solar shades. Just some of the stupid shit we used to love in the 90s. Milli Vanilli, Betty Boo, even Divine Brown. Bonafide tricksters of their time. Welcome to the 90s, and good morning. You're listening to Good Movie Monday, the podcast presented by fakeshemp.net. Find us on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcast from. It's radical to be here today. My name is Glenn Cochran, and I'll be your spin doctor for the episode. And joining me, as he does every week, is the president of the Steve Urkel fan club, Ben Helwig. Hey, mate, how are you?
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Now, there's a reference for you. I wonder if anybody listening will understand what that is.
I certainly hope not.
The Americans might.
Yeah, I mean, look, to be honest with you, once you said the name Betty Boo, I stopped really thinking of anything else.
Well, Betty Boo just doing the do.
I love that you mentioned her with Milli Vanilli, two famous dubbed artists.
May have been intentional.
Well, I believe that at least I think Betty Boo actually did sing the songs.
That's true.
That she just had trouble performing them live, or at least at that one gig, which I guess is fair enough. I mean, yeah. I like it to sound like it sounds on the single that I bought. So I don't mind if they dub themselves.
1 minute in and we're already all over the place. Coming up, our special guest is Tara Kerr, an influencer, for lack of a better word, whose TikTok account has blown up over the last 6 months, thanks in part to her focus on 90s nostalgia. She has hundreds of thousands of followers, and I thought it would be cool to invite her along to look back on the cool stuff from that decade. Ben and I will also get stuck into some of our favourite 90s movies in a few minutes' time. But first, let's just get stuck straight into it, Ben. We'll take a quick look at some of the news from the past week. And I guess the big news is the fact that Warner Brothers are severing their theatrical ties with Village Roadshow in Australia and New Zealand. And I guess the writing was kind of on the wall for a little while with this one. What do you make of this?
Look, I mean, it's one of those things that there are a bunch of deals with all of the US studios and who distributes them here in Australia. At the end of the day, how much difference does it really make to the end consumer? I mean, I liked that when I wanted to book a film at Monster Fest or any Friday Fright Night or whatever, all I would have to do is go to Roadshow and they would pretty much have this massive catalog. So it was like a one-stop shop. But apart from that, I don't who cares?
Yeah. Well, I guess for those people that listening that don't know how this stuff works, is that most big studios contract their distribution of their films to other companies, and in this case, Roadshow have been exhibiting Warner's titles for over 20 years. Warner have announced that they will not be renewing their contract, but instead Universal Pictures will be taking over the reins. So right. I guess within the industry, it's big news, and it kind of marks the next evolution of Universal's domination, if you will.
Yeah. Total domination.
Well, but Roadshow's contract with Warner Brothers Home Entertainment also expires in December, so I imagine that will be the next to go. But they have said that they're not severing ties when it comes to their other business entities like theme parks and whatnot, which is a big pocket in their purse.
I mean, the reason they do it is because they want to save money on logistics. Like Roadshow have a logistics network here in Australia, the same as Universal do. Whereas Warner Brothers, it did have, but then decided to close it all down, which, I mean, it is a kind of common occurrence. Like we've had a lot of closures, I think Studio Canal, and which is ironic because they own Hoyts. But you know, there are a lot of these companies that have closed Melbourne offices and closed Sydney offices and have amalgamated with Sony and with Roadshow and with Universal. So It's
Yep.
it's an ever shifting tide.
You're correct. And the other news that caught my attention this week, simply because Ben loves James Bond so much, while our old mate Keith fucking hates it. Michael Lonsdale, who played the villainous Hugo Drax in Moonraker, has died at the age of 89. He was a great actor. He appeared in dozens of movies, including Day of the Jackal and Ronin, Name of the Rose, which we spoke about last week, just to name some. So there you go. Another, I think, during the course of this show, we've had quite a few Bond people drop off the perch, sadly.
And funnily enough, not one of them has died of COVID-19.
That's true.
So there you go. Sometimes people just die.
They do. which keeps our content fresh.
It's the most profound thing I've ever said.
Well, I don't have much more in the news front, but Guillermo will be dropping by soon to give you the full week's movie news rundown. But right now, it's Jarrett's turn.
Hey, this is Jarrett and welcome to PE Class. Now, this week there are 0 distributors releasing films on home entertainment. That's right, there's nothing coming out on DVD, Blu-ray, or 4K Ultra HD. That's correct. Not a single distributor could shit out an old John Wayne title or a Danny Trejo DTV vehicle on home entertainment this week. There is nothing coming out. What a boring time to be alive. But that said, there is some good news because on October 7th, Disney are going to release Home Alone and Hocus Pocus on 4K Ultra HD. That's correct. Both of those titles, one from the Disney library and one from the Fox library, are headed to 4K Ultra HD locally. Now, they are coming out as 4K only discs. They will not include the Blu-ray, which means you will not get any special features. But at a recommended retail price of around $25 a pop, I don't mind so much. Look, I'll hold on to my Blu-ray if I want those special features. I want to see the film in 4K, and in the instance of Hocus Pocus, I want to hear it with Dolby Atmos. So it's pretty exciting to know that these catalogue titles are going to be coming out from Disney locally. Some other exciting news is Full Metal Jacket is coming to 4K Ultra HD in Australia also. Now, whilst this title has just released in the US and the UK, we'll have to wait a little longer for it in Australia. It's coming out on October 28th. But I don't mind waiting because it's only going to be around $25 retail, and this one will actually have the 4K Ultra HD and the Blu-ray discs together. So you'll get all the special feature content, all archival content from the previous DVD and Blu-ray releases. There's nothing new. But that said, it's a brand new 4K scan and restoration of Stanley Kubrick's classics, so I can't wait. Anyway, that's me for this week, and at least I could bring you some news. So until next week, stay physical.
They break and enter, but they're not thieves. We're getting too old for this. They know your secrets, but they're not spies.
Mr. Bishop, do you mind if I take those?
Carl, grow up.
Now, they've been hired to find a secret
And your job is to find that little black box.
more powerful than any weapon.
Give me the box, Marty.
There isn't a government on this planet that wouldn't kill us all for that thing.
They've almost got us.
Starts tomorrow in select areas and Friday everywhere.
Ben, it's time to log into the 90s, mate. Do you want to just hit that dial up?
Yep, I've hung up the phone, so we're good to go.
Excellent. Well, it's good to be here. But the really shit part of this is that one episode really cannot possibly cover the 90s. And it's such a huge decade for cinema, as all decades are. But there's something I think that's kind of genre defining about the 90s. And I immediately think of things like Silence of the Lambs and Seven. And even in dramatic terms, you've got Driving Miss Daisy, Fried Green Tomatoes, Shawshank, Forrest Gump. The list could go on for days.
Decades. The list could go on for decades.
So I think what we should do is just each pick 2 movies from 3 specific genres: comedy, action, and horror, and just talk about those. And then maybe later down the track we can dedicate more time to this kind of stuff. Now, Ben,
Yes,
we really know how to talk. So the challenge here is going to be landing this block in a timely fashion. So let's try to keep it brief, maybe.
All right. No promises.
No point saying that, really, is there? All right, let's start with comedy. I'll go first, and then maybe we'll take in turns.
All right. And the challenge here, we haven't told each other what our films are, so the challenge is not to double up. This is going to be very interesting.
Yes. Now, just some. Let me just state for this. For me, I'm going on nostalgia. These are films that I saw theatrically, and they left a big impression on me. So I've decided to go with movies that I have not spoken about previously on the show. So people that usually listen to me gush over things like Warlock and Tremors, I'm not going to do that. However, quick plug. Speaking of Tremors, Michael Gross, Burt Gummer himself, will be guesting on the show next month. So make sure you subscribe to our show and don't miss out on that. All right, but comedy. Here we go. My first comedy has to be Don't Tell Mum the Babysitter's Dead.
Ooh.
Now, I saw this one with friends at the cinema when it came out. Kind of felt like a big deal to me at the time, this film. I felt like the publicity for it was huge, but it's kind of just fallen under the radar after all these years. Hardly ever gets spoken about. Christina Applegate, Keith Coogan, and David Duchovny's in this one, and it was directed by Stephen Herrick, the guy behind Bill and Ted and Mighty Ducks and Mr. Holland's Opus. And essentially, it's just about a bunch of kids running amok after their babysitter dies. Completely inappropriate, completely hilarious, would never get made today. And I think it came right off the back of Weekend at Bernie's, and there was a mood for corpses at the time.
Right, and I think it was. I mean, Christina Applegate was coming off or still doing Married with Children. Married with Children. I was about to say Mad About You, and I'm like, geez, that would have been a great show if it would have been Christina Applegate and Mad About You.
Would have made for a good crossover.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been fantastic. Our Psycho Dad, like he's got to do the jingle for Psycho Dad. That would be great.
But I love this movie, and I watched it again probably about 6 months ago and forgot how much I liked it. It just never gets referenced anymore. And it was like you said, she came off that TV show and she was like the headliner, and it was a big deal for her to be in a movie at the time.
Yeah, it was huge. I remember, I remember it on video, like being like the Blockbuster had 200 copies of it. Like it was the movie of that month.
Yep. What have you got?
Okay, well, look, I try to choose movies that, I try to stay away from the obvious ones. Things like Big Lebowski and stuff like that, which everyone loves and everyone's talked about a million times. So my first one is from 1998, directed by Bob Saget. It is Norm Macdonald's Dirty Work.
How did I know you were going to say that one? I deliberately didn't because I suspected you would.
It's one of my all-time favorite films. I only saw this on video. A friend of mine, Anthony, was working at Total Video in Ashwood, and he closed the shop so we could sit there and watch it without being disturbed by annoying customers one morning. Basically, it's Norm Macdonald and his good friend Artie Lang trying to come up with money to buy their Artie Lang's ailing father's a new heart. And the father is played by Jack Warden, whose only two interests in life are alcohol and whores.
Or as Norm Macdonald would say, whores.
And his doctor is played by Chevy Chase, who has a gambling problem. Who he bet on Mr. T against Rocky in Rocky 3 because it had great odds. There's also like Christopher McDonald is the villain, who's I think that may have been one of his early turns as a villain in films, and he's one of the great cinematic villains. Trailer Howard, the stunning Trailer Howard from Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place, though later on they axed the pizza place part of it. That show is the love interest. Don Rickles pops up. It's phenomenal. It's really good. Oh, and the whole premise of the show, is they're trying to get money to get Jack Warden a new heart, and they start a business getting revenge for people who don't have the balls to get revenge themselves. And so they basically just pull a bunch of pranks on people.
Yep. And Norm Macdonald is one of my favorite human beings in general. And this was pinnacle stuff for me with him. Absolutely love it.
I mean, this was his first starring role. I think he only did 2 movies from memory, this and Screwed. I think this was the superior, though Screwed did have Dave Chappelle and Danny DeVito, who both did amazing things in that film.
Absolutely. For my second one, I've gone with something that is pretty typical, but I couldn't go past it because I love it so much. I've gone with City Slickers. And
Wow.
talk about a brilliant film. I mean, this is hilarious, dramatic, exciting. It's action, comedy, drama, all wrapped in one. Billy Crystal, Daniel Stern, and Bruno Kirby, with Jack Palance's Oscar-winning turn as Curly. I saw this one theatrically. I was really young, and I've probably watched it about 30 times over the year, and I think it really endures well because it's so sincere, and the production design is incredible. Like, you'd swear you're watching one of those classic Hollywood westerns. And look, if you've never seen City Slickers and you're listening to this, then Jesus Christ, go out and watch it immediately. It's just brilliant.
It's a great fish out of water movie, or three fish fish out of water.
Do you remember that scene when Daniel Stern is grinding? No, Billy Crystal is grinding his coffee.
Yeah,
and it causes a stampede. It doesn't get much funnier than that. And look, City Slickers 2, it must be said, is not half bad either.
And look, to be honest, City Slickers is the reason I know that it is possible to do one-armed push-ups. If it wasn't for that film, I wouldn't have thought it was possible.
Yes.
Now that's a reference. Now, just if you're out there, you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Jack Palance one-armed push-ups, and it is an amazing sight to see.
Main stage at the Oscars,
yeah.
Yeah, hilarious. No reason for it either.
Just to prove that he could. He still had it. And he had more at 80 than I have now at 40.
That's true. Me too. What do you got next?
My second film is an Australian film that has recently got a bit of coverage because Umbrella are re-releasing it on Blu-ray shortly. It is
thank God.
Nadia Tass's The Big Steal.
Thank God. I deliberately avoided this one because I talk about it too much.
Yeah. Like, it just squeaks in at 1990. Written by her partner in crime, David Parker. Stars Ben Mendelsohn, Claudia Cavan, Damon Herriman, who is now making it big overseas, Angelo D'Angelo, and in a scene-stealing performance, Steve Bisley as the sleazy second-hand car dealer. Basically, the movie,
Gordon Farkas.
Gordon Farkas, that's right. If you haven't seen the film, Ben Mendelsohn is desperately in love with Claudia Cavan, who he thinks doesn't know he's alive, and to impress her, he tries to he pretends that he's got a Jag. So to get a Jag, he trades in his parents' old car, this Nissan Cedric, for a Jag that it turns out is a complete piece of shit, because Steve Bisley, who is a secondhand car dealer, a sleazy secondhand car dealer, sells cars with excellent motors and stuff, and then the minute the owner turns their back, he replaces it with shitty motors and does all sorts of dodgy things. So the rest of the film is basically Ben Mendelsohn trying to get his have his date with Claudia Cavan and not get tagged for having the shitty car, and get his good car, his good motor back off Steve Bisley.
And there lies the title, The Big Steal, because they essentially steal the engine from the good one to swap it out.
Yeah, that's right.
Look, this is my absolute number one favourite Australian film of all time, and I recently parted ways with Scarefest. I sort of stood away from my duties there. So to say goodbye, I did a massive top 10, Aussie films you must see, and my number one was The Big Steal. Right. I can't wait for that Blu-ray. Cannot wait for it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm curious now, what was the other 9 films on that list?
Well, I tailored it more for that audience, stuff that, like, if it was my personal, like, ultimate list, not all of these would make the cut, but stuff like Mystery Road, just for a film noir sense. Go back with Romper Stomper, Bad Boy Bubby, Mystery Road. It's all on our Facebook and YouTube. You can go watch it. But
I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, there were no horror films on it because I'd spent the last 12 months talking about horror exclusively. So Kenny was in there because I just adore Kenny.
That, in some ways, that is a horror film. I mean, the guy cleans toilets for a living.
I don't know a more likable character in Australian cinema, though.
No, that's a good point.
All right, let's go on to action. This is really goddamn hard. There's just too many action movies that came from this decade. But I'm going to go with The Last Boy Scout from 1991.
Oh, a classic.
Simply because it kind of stands alone for me. Like Bruce Willis, Damon Wayans, Shane Black, and Tony Scott. Like, what a combination. And I think it was an R-rated film too in Australia. And I personally think it's one of the best things Bruce Willis has done outside of Die Hard. Super snappy, fast-paced, and it's all about a cop and a football player who get caught up in a sort of a murder that's linked to the corrupt football league. And yeah, it's on par for me with Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, I think I enjoy it a lot more than I enjoy the Lethal Weapon movies. And it also like Halle Berry as a stripper. Uh, what's it? Chelsea Field plays his wife, and Danielle Harris, a 6-year-old, or I think she's not 6, she's probably 10-year-old Danielle Harris as his smart mouth daughter.
That's right.
Who is amazing. Like she almost steals the picture. She's so good. And the villains are like Taylor Negron and I can't remember the guy's name. He's got a weird first name. He's in Sons of Anarchy. He's the guy who does the whole thing by the pool. He's like, can I get a light? And then punches him in the face. He goes, do that again, I'll kill you.
But I adore Tony Scott movies, particularly from that era. Like he just had something about him. Like I would take a Tony Scott film from the 90s over a Ridley Scott film from the 90s.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, how divergent their careers went? Like Tony Scott's much more kind of mainstream, whereas Ridley was always kind of more on the art house. So like I think there's a greater chance. It was very hit and miss with Ridley. Like he did some phenomenal films and he did some kind of stinkers, whereas Tony Scott was always much more like good all the time at a level.
Yes, and Tony Scott, I think that was because of his partnership with Jerry Bruckheimer.
Yeah.
Like there was, that was the winning combo right there.
Yeah, and Don Simpson. Don Simpson back in the day too.
Yeah, yes, but even then, like Tony Scott took a few chances with stuff like True Romance and made weirder films that weren't quite mainstream.
Yeah, that is true. I keep forgetting about True Romance is a Tony Scott film.
I know, it's bizarre. What have you got for your first action?
Okay, I've gone for 1998's Deep Rising. Now, technically, this could slot into the horror section, but I've got other films in the horror section, so I decided to include it here in the action section. It was directed by Stephen Sommers before he hit it big with the Mummy franchise. Stars Treat Williams, Wes Studi, Kevin J. O'Connor, Famke Janssen, and Jason Fleming, and Digimon Hausu, who's I can never pronounce his name, pop up as well. Basically, it is a giant sea monster movie aboard a ocean liner, a cruise, a fancy pants cruise ship, and the creature is awesome. I think Treat Williams and Wes Studi, they're all like thieves coming to rob the rich people on the boat and get caught up in the giant kind of monster thing happening. I think Famke Janssen is also a thief, but she's actually invited to the party and she's stealing stuff from within. But then they have to escape through the bows of the ship. It is a phenomenal action film. Really good special effects for that period when CGI was just coming in, and there are a lot of like dodgy special effects driven movies, things like Beowulf and stuff like that. And then this one came along where the effects are really good. They really work with the film, are integrated really well. There's lots of awesome kills. There's lots of awesome action. It's just a really, really strong film, in my opinion.
I agree completely, but it's that one's well and truly fallen under the radar over the years. I haven't even seen it on DVD. Like VHS was the last time I saw that film. I used to love it.
Oh, right. No, well, I think Kino Lorber released a Blu-ray of it not too long ago, like a couple of years ago. Funnily enough, under their Studio Classics label, which I don't know if this counts as a Studio Classic. I don't know if it's old enough.
Well, funny, it's very similar to my first horror film when we get to that. But my second action film, I kind of feel the same way about this as I did with Last Boy Scout. I'm going with Showdown in Little Tokyo.
Oh, what a classic!
From 1991, Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee. And this was sort of made when that Oriental-themed action movie craze was coming to the tail end. It was on its way out, and I think that's maybe why it didn't sort of hit the spot like the other ones did. But it's about two cops hunting down a Yakuza killer in Los Angeles, and they have a witness in protection, and the usual action ensues. It's short, it's snappy, it's very funny, and a product of its time. I love it. Like, it doesn't hold up particularly well, but it's super fun.
I really want to check it out again. I remember Tia Carrere. I think Tia Carrera's in it as Dolph Lundgren's kind of love interest, and the way I can never pronounce his name, but Kerry the villain of the film, like he kills people. It's the one where he has sex with women from behind, and while he's pounding away, he pulls out a samurai sword and cuts their head off because That's,
I mean, once again, like this is also a completely R-rated film
yeah.
from its time. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I don't know what it is about it. Like, I think I mean, it's a very hokey kind of movie. It's just, I guess you call it, flimsy, but it does hold up well. Like, Richard Lester directed it.
I think it was
No, Mark
Mark
Lester
Lester.
directed it.
I think it was like I mean, I think it did get a theatrical release, but I always think of it as the home video version of Rising Sun, which was a Sean Connery, Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
Like funnily enough, Tia Carrere is also in Rising Sun, and so is Kerry. Is in it as well, and very kind of similar thing, but at least that one takes place in Japan. Like they're both kind of Black Rainy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, there were only like 5 names on the casting list back then of Oriental actors
that were great at playing villains. Because he was also the villain in Baywatch as well, the one who kills Mitch's fiance and stuff. And, yeah, he's great. He's a great actor. He was in a couple of great TV series as well. I really like him. I just can't pronounce his name to save myself.
All right. So what's your next one?
My next one, I couldn't let this go past without talking about the great man Jim Wynorski and his 1996 direct-to-video classic Demolition High.
Yeah.
Starring Corey Haim, Alan Thicke, and Jeff Kober, who was born to play a villain. As the bad guys. Melissa Bressel pops up because if you're in a Jim Wynorski film, you do need to have a busty babe in there somewhere, even if it is set in a high school. Basically, Corey Haim is a New York kind of cool New York kid whose father forces him to move to the suburbs, where he's taken a job as a police chief, and Alan Thicke is his father. And he's sent to a school where he's a bit of an outsider, until one day a gang of nuclear terrorists on the run from the police crash land the school and hold all the students hostage, except for Corey Haim, who escapes, and it's very kind of Home Alone-y, but not comedy.
Well, it's the Jim Wynorski answer to Toy Soldiers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, I have to admit, I gotta admit, I know the film, but I had no idea Wynorski had directed that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that was one that he'd done under a pseudonym. The VHS tape that I have does not mention the director, or no, it does. No, and it is under his name, under Jim Wynorski.
Well, that's interesting because, I think even though it was like a direct-to-video kind of release, I recall that one being quite good. It wasn't a cheap movie by any means. When you watched it, it felt like every other studio kind of movie.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, and that is the mark of Jim Wynorski at that period. Like, all his movies were actually quite good, despite the fact that they would have had, $300,000 budgets. And there is a sequel. There's Demolition University as well.
Yes, I was going to ask about that one. Did he direct that too?
I believe so. I haven't seen it. I have not, funnily enough, because I do not have it on tape. I don't know if it got a VHS release here. But
I think it got a really cheap DVD release here through
Magna Pacific
one of those,
or something. Or
yes,
Force.
one of those sort of labels. I think it was Force.
Force, yeah. That sounds about right.
It had all the ghosting on it. When the DVDs back then had ghosting across the screen. All right, so let's move on to horror. Now, this is where I was saying I've got one that's similar to Deep Rising. Trying to select 90s horror movies that I haven't discussed in this podcast is practically impossible. But one I don't think I've mentioned is 1997's The Relic, starring Peter Hyam. Directed by Peter Hyam, starring Penelope Ann Miller and Tom Sizemore. And it's about a reptilian monster that's unleashed and goes on a rampage in a museum. This is classic creature feature stuff. The effects are great. It's very minimal because it's all dark, so they got away with the creature being CGI without looking too tacky. And I think it's genuinely scary, but the production design is incredible, and the fact that they weren't A-lister headliners, like Penelope Ann Miller and Tom Sizemore were, they were secondary cast members in every other film. So I think having them in the lead kind of upped the production value.
Well, I think had she just come off The Shadow, or was just about to do The Shadow at that point? I remember it coming out. I remember The Relic, Mimic, and Phantoms all seemingly felt like they all came around the same time.
Yeah, it was a real throw up for me between The Relic and Mimic, on this episode. I just wasn't sure which one to talk about. But I think The Relic is the one that doesn't get discussed enough, just because you got Guillermo del Toro directing the other. You know, Peter
Yeah.
Hyams is. I mentioned him last week when I talked about 2010. Just a completely undervalued director of his time.
Mm.
So there you go.
Well, my first pick is also a creature feature. It is 1993's Ticks, directed by Tony Randall, starring, and basically the plot of this film is Peter Scolari and Rosalind Allen, who listeners may remember from Sequest DSV, take a bunch of street kids, and the street kids are amazing. There's Amy Dolan's, Seth Green, and my personal favorite, Alfonso Ribeiro, who listeners may know as Carlton from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, playing a tough, tough street kid. They take him to this kind of camp in the woods as a kind of a weekend getaway type thing for these. It's like a community center type thing. I think their parole officers or something are forcing them to go, or something like that. And then of course Clint Howard mixes ticks with some radioactive ooze, and they become huge and man-eating. And there are great kind of like ticks inside people who burst out of bodies and
awesome
people's heads, and there's a giant tick at the end, and it's just an amazing film.
Yes, excellent. I've got another creature feature for you too. A tacky one that I may lose a bit of cred over, but I've got no fucks to give about that. So the movie is 1999's Bats, starring Lou Diamond Phillips.
And Dynamite.
A stinking turd to most, but a creature feature, haven for me. It was the interesting thing about this one. It was written by John Logan. Now, this is the guy that wrote Skyfall, Spectre, The Aviator, Any Given Sunday, Last Samurai. That's the guy that wrote Bats.
Jeez, well, that's one good movie out of. No, I love The Last Samurai. I haven't seen Bats. I remember when it came out, and I really wanted to see it, and I don't know why I didn't. And it's been one that I've been wanting to rectify ever since. And I do have it on tape somewhere, but I can't find it.
Look, I think I love it when respectable filmmakers come from these sort of humble B movie beginnings, and this is a super fun movie. I don't think there's not much reason to ridicule it. I think the CGI in it's quite good. It's no different from any other B movie like The Blob or whatever. It's the same generic kind of formula, just with bats, and it just works for me. Well worth a revisit. I love Lou Diamond Phillips. Wish he would headline more movies that aren't Cop and a Half 2.
Yeah, when's that the late time for a late sequel for the Cowboy Way? Or no, sorry, no, he's not in Cowboy Way. He's in Renegades. Sorry, Renegades. A late sequel to Renegades.
Sure. We should just go and pillage the 90s and make crappy sequels. Oh, yeah. Man, let's start a company.
With their kid. We'll get Adam Beach to play Lou Diamond Phillips' son.
Oh,
I've just exhausted the two Native American actors that I know.
We should get onto Shudder and say, hey, join with us. We'll make this company, and we'll just make out some of the worst sequels you can think of, and they're going to be great.
It's like was it Castle Rock? Not Castle Rock. What was the name of that company that did House on Haunted Hill and 13 Ghosts?
Dark Castle.
Dark Castle. Yeah, it was just do stuff like that. Like just these remakes of but of 90s movies. It'd be amazing.
Yeah. All right, what have you got?
My second film is sort of a creature feature, but not really. It's 1994's Wolf. Yeah, it's a fantastic film directed by Mike Nichols, starring Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer, James Spader, and Christopher Plummer. Basically, Jack Nicholson plays an aging publisher who's kind of being forced out of his job, and I think one day while walking home after a party, he gets bitten by like a bum that's actually a werewolf. Like he's not a bum. He's like I think he's sick or something. Like he's out of control.
No,
is that what happens?
No, he has a car accident and on the side of the road and gets attacked by a wolf in the
woods. Right, that's right.
Yeah, and James Spader plays like his colleague that's sort of hungry for his position.
Yeah, he's the one trying to push him out. He's supposed to be his protege and tries to push him out. And with Christopher Plummer, who's the owner of the publishing house, but once Jack Nicholson gets the werewolf bug, he develops a whole bunch of self-confidence and does awesome things, like he pisses all over James Spader's shoes and screws him out of the job and starts starts a thing with Michelle Pfeiffer, because why wouldn't you if you're Jack Nicholson? And then they have,
and she's Christopher Plummer's daughter.
She is Christopher Plummer's daughter. Yep. So he bangs the boss's daughter, shits all over his former protege, and then in the process, at some point, he bites James Spader. So then the end of the film is them having a werewolf fight across New York. It's amazing.
Fantastic stuff. There's the particular showdown in the barn when they're at each other, like two dogs circling. It is awesome. It's one of my favorite werewolf films, actually, and I think I'd have to say top 10 Jack Nicholson performances for me.
Yeah, like it's really good, and he's he's married, and there's issues there, and there's a lot in the film. And it's
like, I remember reading somewhere an interview. I don't know if it was with Jack Nicholson or with Mike Nichols, but they were talking about how Jack Nicholson's commitment to this, like, he was the one that spearheaded the film, and he was so invested in the werewolf mythology that he read every bit of literature he could. Like, he really tried to become a dog, and I think it shows on screen. He really commits to it.
The thing that's really remarkable for a movie in the 90s is the makeup is subtle. Like, they don't go kind of the Benicio del Toro route where the Wolfman is this giant beast. Like, they actually really kind of work with the actors' features and stuff, and tie it all in and blend it in, so that like, they do have the kind of wolfen features, but it's not ridiculous. They don't look like a CGI creation.
They practically just give him like mutton chops, yellow eyes, and some incisors.
Yeah,
that's it.
Basically, that's it. Yeah,
very, very clever. I love it. Well, there we go. Well, we got through it as expected. I think that probably took way longer than it was supposed to, but I think we were pretty restrained. I think that was pretty good.
I think there's a lot left unsaid.
Oh, is there what? So more shows coming up, I reckon. But without further delay, here's Guillermo, and then after that, Tara Town.
What's happening, everybody? It's Guillermo here again from ScreenRealm.com. Happy to be back on Good Movie Monday. Let's talk a little bit about what we've covered on the website in the past week. Kicking off with what sounds like a Netflix movie that's just made for awards. Bradley Cooper is directing a biopic on renowned composer and conductor Leonard Bernstein, known for West Side Story and On the Waterfront. He'll also be starring as Bernstein and has co-written the screenplay with Josh Singer, known for Spotlight, The Post, and First Man. Cooper has been developing the film for around 3 years now, and he's finally found his co-star, Oscar nominee Carey Mulligan, whose credits include Never Let Me Go and Education and Shame. Mulligan will be starring as Felicia Montealegre Cohen Bernstein, the Chilean stage and television actress who was married to Leonard for 25 years. In a statement, Cooper said, "I was struck by Carey ever since I saw her on stage many years ago, and I haven't missed a performance of hers since. I am humbled to be working with such a mammoth talent, as well as such a kind person in Carey." Cooper has been working on this one with the blessing and input of the Bernstein family, who have said that they are very happy to have Mulligan in the role of their mother. Definitely looking forward to seeing how Cooper follows up 2019's A Star Is Born. And in more Netflix news, the streaming giant has forked out $30 million to acquire worldwide rights to The Guilty, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and directed by Antoine Fuqua, known for Training Day and The Equalizer. The film will be taking place over the course of a single morning and will be following a 911 dispatch call operator, played by Gyllenhaal. Get ready to feel the tension as he tries to save a caller who's in grave danger, but he soon discovers that nothing is as it seems, and facing the truth will be the only way out of this situation. This is actually a remake of a 2018 Danish thriller that is absolutely a must-see. Screen Realm actually had a review from Glenn go up in 2019. He gave it 5 stars, calling it a masterclass in suspense. In a statement, Gyllenhaal said, "I couldn't be more excited to work with Antoine again. Our time together on Southpaw," I love that film by the way, "was one of the greatest artistic experiences of my career, and I cannot wait to be back on set with him again. The Guilty is a special story, and one that we all feel very close to." Ryan Gosling, who played a stuntman in Drive and The Place Beyond the Pines, will be doing so once again in a stuntman action drama directed by David Leitch, known for Deadpool 2, Atomic Blonde, and Hobbs & Shaw. Universal Pictures came out on top of a big bidding war that reportedly passed $125 million. The film has been called The Fall Guy and is believed to be in the vein of the 1980s TV show of the same name. Could be an all-out adaptation, but that doesn't seem to have been confirmed. The script is going to be coming from Drew Pearce, who worked with Leitch on Hobbs & Shaw. This project has been stuck in development hell for quite a number of years now. In 2013, director MCG, known for Charlie's Angels and Terminator Salvation, wanted to take a crack with Dwayne Johnson, but that version never never got off the ground. Fingers crossed all goes well with this one. We also had a couple of reviews go up in the past week. Adam Fleet reviewed a horror film called Veronica. Maybe you heard about this one. It's a horror film so bad and bizarre you may have to see it. This film, which has been called the Room of Horror Films, is currently streaming on Shudder, and just to give you an idea, it's a 3-part horror anthology, and one of the stories has a model who is encumbered romantically by the fact that she has eyeballs instead of nipples. A bizarre fact that has absolutely zero relevance to any aspect of the plot, and she also summons an 8-armed albino homicidal man spider known as the Neckbreaker. Suffice it to say, Adam gave it 1 out of 5 stars, but did say, while it is indeed dreadful, it is in such a bizarre lunatic way that it really must be seen to be believed. So check out that review. We also had a review from Glenn for The Secrets We Keep, a thriller starring Noomi Rapace and Joel Kinnaman. This film, which currently has a very limited cinema release in Australia, is very similar to Roman Polanski's 1994 film Death and the Maiden, but they've never actually made it official that it's a remake, which makes it all the more frustrating for Glenn, who loves that film. Apart from the blatant plagiarism, Glenn thought the film wasn't good regardless. It has Noomi Rapace playing a woman who kidnaps the guy she believes tortured her during the war and begins to torture him in her basement. Insisting that she's got the wrong guy, he refuses to confess to his crimes, which leaves her husband more uncertain as to what is going on. In his review, Glenn wrote, "The Secrets We Keep is an uninspired carbon copy of a much better film. Unassuming moviegoers may latch onto the compelling synopsis, but ought to be disappointed with the lack of substance within." He gave it 2 out of 5 stars. That about does it for me, guys. Also jump on ScreenRealm.com to check out the complete October release schedules for both Stan and Netflix. That's up there now. Thanks so much for having me. I'm out.
Welcome to Bonehead Weekly Fun Size. So as much as we loved the shitty 90s horror rip-offs of Scream, there's actually some good rip-offs of Screams that we... Screams? Why didn't they call Scream 2 Screams?
Oh my God, they could have. And
Why
then they
did
could
they
have
do that?
What would they call 3? More Screams or Shrills?
Scream 3, that's what Alien 3 did.
That's what I was going to say.
And then Scream 4 could have been Scream Resurrection.
Oh my God.
And then it could have been Scream versus I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Or no, it would have been
Scream versus I Know What You Did Last Summer, Requiem.
Scream 5, The Iron Lung.
You lost me on that one. So really quick, we're going to tell you some of the best Scream ripoffs. And mine technically came out in 2000, but I want you to forgive me because it was really shot way before that. And mine is Cherry Falls. Cherry Falls has a distinct take on Scream because the murderer kills who, gentlemen? Virgins. That's the reason why it's called Cherry Falls. It's an interesting movie. It's kind of flawed. It doesn't have the best ending. But what I find fascinating over it is and I'm going to read this, issues with the MPAA and censorship. The film was never actually given a theatrical release in the United States and was released as a TV movie on the USA Network. It cost $14 million, gentlemen. Do you know at the time it was the most expensive television movie ever produced?
You know, that makes sense.
For the USA Network. Now, there had been huge things for CBS, ABC. We could talk about The Stand, Roots, and whatnot. For USA Network at $14 million, that was the most expensive thing they'd ever made.
Well, and The Stand was a multi-night thing. But real quick about Cherry Falls, you know where I saw it for the first time was Comedy Central. I'm not making that up.
I think I may have rented it, and it's an interesting premise. It's directed by the guy that gave us, for you folks in Australia, Romper Stomper.
I'll go next. So mine's a little on the nose because it is a blatant ripoff of Scream, and that is The Faculty.
But isn't it such a flawed movie?
It is a flawed movie, but Jon Stewart's performance in that is worth the watch. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to bash on the internet like I do many other times. I thought about doing Bride of Chucky because it is listed as a movie inspired by Cream, or Scream, not Cream.
Yeah, not on top.
Bride of Chucky is not a Scream inspired by Scream. Bride of Chucky is inspired by Child's Play. You idiots.
Oh, actually, more of like Bride of Frankenstein. I'll argue with you there a little bit.
Well, it's a combination of the two.
Scream thrown in there. I mean, the poster's a blatant ripoff of Scream.
That it is, but that's marketing being unoriginal.
But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 poster is a complete ripoff of The Breakfast Club that came out the year before.
Right. So that's why I am picking The Faculty, just because it is entertaining. It is a blatant ripoff. It only exists because Scream was popular, and it's entertaining for a few reasons. But it like Joe said, flawed movie.
Directed by Robert Rodriguez, has a fantastic cast.
Yes.
Yeah.
James.
And Dimension ripped themselves off. It's another Dimension movie.
Yeah. Dimension said, "Oh, this worked. Let's do it 30 more times."
I'm going to go real quickly with a ripoff that had the good decency to come out before Scream. There's Nothing Out There. If you've never heard of There's Nothing Out There, there's an entire article about it in The Atlantic that actually alleges that Wes Craven probably lifted some ideas from There's Nothing Out There. So I wanted to bring it up. The guy that made it at 19, wrote it at 19, got it made. His parents mortgaged their house, which shows that his parents had more faith in him than they had. And this movie did get released in theaters, limited release in New York during a blizzard, and in LA right before the race riots. So nobody saw it. He took it, started taking it around to film festivals, and then this up-and-coming producer by the name of Scott Craven said, "Hey, my dad heard about your movie. He'd like to see your movie." All this is well documented. The movie itself is about a guy that starts to notice weird things going on, like the cat jump scene and Alien and all that stuff. He notices a cat jump out of it, no reason. He goes, "There's no where that cat would jump out of. Why did that cat jump out?" He realizes that he's in a horror film, and so he starts trying to manipulate himself. He starts manipulating everything else, trying to save his friends. And what happens? His friends don't listen to him. And guess what happens to them?
They go on to have successful lives because they ignore James.
There's Nothing Out There. Eventually did get re-released on DVD. I thought maybe Chad had seen it because guess who re-released it? Kaufman.
Oh, really?
Re-released it under Troma.
Thanks, guys. This has been Bonehead Weekly Fun Size. Please send all your hate mail to Chad Jennings via Glenn.
Huh.
Seem right, easy when you're on the outside. Overbound, rich to wounded knee, low on the ground as far as the sea. Crazy life. In the air, I'm sensing the change. Path
There's one that takes me back, all the way back to 1995, or more precisely 96, when I was living in Vancouver and saw Empire Records for the first time. Crazy Life was the name of the song by Toad the Wet Sprocket, and I wonder how many people actually remember them. And now we're actually going to do something a little bit different. Over the past few months, we've been talking to all kinds of filmmakers and actors, but today we're talking to someone who caught my attention not too long ago. I've been fascinated by positive social media influencers for a little while now. And I'm not talking about those awful, superficial plastic ones who crash all of our media screenings and take up valuable oxygen. I'm talking about those few who use their online presence to put positive energy out into the world, and they're not in it for the money, they're not in it for the fame. In fact, they're usually quite shocked to have tens of thousands of followers, if not millions. And one of the first people to catch my attention when I first signed on to the TikTok app goes by the name of Tara Town. And if you're on the app, you've probably scrolled past her account too. And it's been her particular penchant for 90s nostalgia that caught my eye. Her name is Tara Kerr, and she's been gracious enough to drop into today's episode. We have her on the line right now. Hey Tara, how the heck are you?
Hey Glenn, what's up? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a while since I approached you, but I'm super thrilled that we're finally able to chat like this.
I know, right? COVID's kind of put us in a bit of a pickle, but now we're here.
Oh, well, lemonade, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, before we reminisce about the good old days, let's skim the surface and give people a little bit of a brief bio about who you are. I'm going to just say some things. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you're from the southwestern part of Tennessee. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's right.
And the travel bug hit you several years ago, and amongst other places, you visited Australia, maybe 7 years ago, where you hung around for a while before finding a guy, getting hitched, and settling down in Melbourne.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. So, of course, you're an open book on your Tara Town TikTok account, and you regularly host live streams, and you tell everybody your story. So if there's anything any of our listeners want to know about you after the show, they need to go and find you on TikTok, follow your account, and get the down low.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I guess the obvious question for me right off the bat would be, what compelled you to join TikTok in the first place?
I was seeing TikTok videos show up in my Instagram feed, and I thought that they were really funny and really creative. And so, I just decided to hop on and see what it was all about, just being a new social media platform. And once you get on, I don't know if this was the case for you, Glenn, but once you get on, like, you see one video and then you scroll to the next and to the next and to the next, and you're just on there for like an hour looking at all these videos because they're short form videos. I mean, most of them are only 15 seconds long. So it just, it draws you in very quickly, and you get hooked on it very quickly as well. So
yeah, particularly when I TikTok right before bed, like I lay there and I do a few TikToks, and before I know it, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. It can be a trap, but it's a fun trap.
Exactly. It's not like, it's not the typical social media platform where, like on Instagram, it just seems like you're scrolling through like a beautiful magazine, whereas I feel like TikTok is more a bit more authentic, and people kind of just being themselves, dressing in whatever the heck they're wearing for the day, and just showing their creative juices, which I feel like people don't get to do as much anymore, being a working adult, So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Were you shocked by the amount of people who follow your content with total eagerness?
Dude, yes. I am from a small town in Tennessee, so to receive as many followers as I have is just really crazy. But it's been so awesome because you realize that you're like, there's people just like you all around the world. Because sometimes with you and your interests and your hobbies, you kind of feel alone, or you feel like other people can't connect. But the cool thing about the internet, and on TikTok specifically, is that I've been able to find other people that have similar interests as me, and it just makes it really awesome to have a platform like that.
I think for your content, you're more of a motivator.
Yeah. Motivate. Why do you say that?
Why? I don't know, because when I scroll through TikTok, there's those few, and there are quite a few, but not many, that when I land on their accounts, I want to go through all of their stuff because it just makes me happy. It makes me feel good. And it just motivates me, as opposed to there's a lot there that are stupid, but there's not really a hook to get them scrolling through through their accounts, but yours definitely does.
Ah, interesting. So what was your first video that you saw of mine? Just curiosity.
Well, for people that don't know your content, you started dancing your way to 100,000.
Yeah.
And I know you've abandoned that dance, but that dance is definitely what caught my attention, just because you did it in all different kinds of places. It's a peculiar kind of dance.
Yeah.
And it's almost hypnotic when you have a whole scroll full of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I know that's what a
Yeah.
lot of people said. For some reason, that dance was one that tended to trend, and it was really fun for the amount of time that I did do it.
But I think it speaks volumes for your integrity, though. The fact that you sort of did away with the dance because the lyrics of the song itself didn't sit well with you, so you gave it up. You danced your way to 200,000 fans with that thing, and you just you threw it away just because of your integrity.
Yeah, the song was in Portuguese, and I didn't know what the lyrics were. Everybody was dancing to this particular song, and then when I finally found out the translation of the lyrics, I asked myself, if this was in English, would I be dancing to this every day? And I said no. So it's got a really cool beat, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, my morals kind of go over any kind of follower count. So we're doing we're just sticking solely on 90s. I was doing that dance and I was doing 90s videos, and now we're just kind of sticking solely to 90s. Still doing dancing like the Carlton dance, and we danced to Ice Ice Baby, but but it's cool. I feel good about this change, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to the nostalgic videos as well. So
Definitely. Well, as I said a moment ago, you mostly focus on nostalgia. So obviously you're a child of the 90s. What do you think sets the 90s apart from other decades?
ooh, that's a good question. What sets the 90s apart from different decades? I think, the 90s just seem like, and probably every generation says that, back in my day, things were just, a lot more simple. But I do feel like it was a cool place where, the technology was just starting to kind of make its way into everybody's, houses and homes. And
baggy pants and fluoro colors also?
Yes, baggy pants, fluoro colors. But yeah, just being on the edge of having, no technology, and then to all of a sudden be able to log onto the internet, which I think was really cool. But yeah, it was just, I think not having an iPhone in your hand 24/7 was nice. The music was just really nice. I think another thing was, family friendly TV shows the whole family could watch, whereas I feel like everything nowadays is very individualized. Whereas back in the day, all of us can kind of, we know which TV shows we've all seen because those were the only family shows that would play on the screen. So,
well, every generation, right, has its particular decade that they're nostalgic for. In the last few years, I feel it's been heavily focused on the 80s, particularly in terms of movies and TV, which means that the 90s is up next. So we've already had a movie last year called Mid-90s, which was fantastic. So maybe let's throw back, and we might actually do this in a similar way that we do our rapid fire interviews. I'm just going to ask you some questions and let's see how we go. So if you cast your mind back, what did an average weekend look like for you in the 90s?
Well, I was a kid in the 90s. I was a late 80s baby, early 90s kid. So weekends usually consisted of some random hobby or sport that I was into, probably like soccer or basketball, playing outside, climbing trees, going on AOL and waiting for that little connection to hit and hearing You've Got Mail. That was like the highlight of my weekend, probably. Yeah, playing awesome. N64, GoldenEye.
You're an N64 child. I was an original NES child.
Yeah, see, a little bit of a difference there.
So obviously, our show is all about movies. I'm wondering, what were some of your staple movies from your childhood that you maybe watched over and over?
Ooh, I really loved Mrs. Doubtfire. That one I can still watch today and still puts a smile on my face. Anything with Robin Williams in it was spectacular. Yeah. Of course, all of the Disney movies, being a kid, Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. One underrated Disney movie that people don't know is a Goofy movie. Have you seen a Goofy movie?
I have got that listed to ask you about later.
Oh, dude, it is so underrated.
Maximilian, absolutely.
Yes.
And an extremely goofy movie too, part 2.
Yes. But you know what? I haven't actually seen that one.
Yeah, it's not as good, but
Oh, really?
Goofy movie's fantastic. And that era of Disney was like the renaissance of Disney. It sort of brought them back into blockbuster status. Do you have fond memories of video stores?
Yeah, Blockbuster. That was the video store to go to on a Friday night. You get your pizza, you go to Blockbuster, you hope that the movie you're looking for is behind that little box. If it's not, if it was a new release, it was pretty much not going to be there, but there was just that chance that it was. So that was always really exciting.
Damn straight. Most of my working life has been in video stores before.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I owned one. So for years it was sort of that was my thing. I was the video store guy, but all good things must come to an end, I guess.
Ah, so you were rivals with Blockbuster, were you?
Yes, actually I was. I was before I went completely independent and just became one of those sort of trendy niche little stores.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so the 90s also produced, I think, it's probably the best decade for movie soundtracks. Were you into movie soundtracks? You're probably a bit young for the 90s ones.
Yeah, I was a bit young, I'd say. Yeah. The Disney soundtracks, I was all over.
Absolutely. There was a phase in the 90s where I was into that stuff too, and I had like all of those classic Disney CDs, which sort of was like a collection of all the greats.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I mean,
Good
yeah,
stuff.
you can't go wrong with the Disney music.
Do you remember when movies, particularly in the 90s, used to always be attached, particularly the big movies, were always attached to like a blockbuster song, like a hit song?
Oh,
And
yeah.
all the music videos had like the movie sort of sewn into the music video.
Dude, that's so true. I don't know why I've never really thought about that, but that's so true.
Like I remember, what was it? Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, had that Bryan Adams song, Everything I Do It for You.
Yeah. And Titanic, My Heart Will Go On.
Absolutely. That was probably sort of towards the end of that era of these fantastic tie-in songs. I love them. They're like power ballads.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so here's a slightly embarrassing question for you.
Oh no.
Did you have any teen stars pinned to your bedroom wall, even if it was in the 2000s?
You know what? I never was the girl that pinned the teen stars to my walls. I did have like little secret crushes, but I didn't have them on my wall because, of course, nobody can know. And do I dare reveal them now? I don't know.
Just one.
Just one. Okay, we'll go with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. I mean, he was, he was every girl's crush back in the day. So
yes, I'll Be Home for Christmas.
Yes, I'll Be Home for Christmas. Home Improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good answer. Mine was probably Alicia Silverstone.
Ah.
And yes, I had her on my wall in many places.
Awesome.
If you could bring back a few things from the 90s, what do you think they would be?
Oh, if I could bring back like physical objects or like specific memories or
anything that you could bring from the 90s to now.
There's just so many to choose from. So many things. Dun, 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 dun.
That was 70s.
That's Jeopardy. You Australians don't. Do you know Jeopardy?
Oh yeah, we did used to have it.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. I thought that was just completely an American thing.
We had a short-lived Australian version in the 90s, as well as the imported version from the States.
Okay, so let's see if we could bring back anything from the 90s. I don't know if you guys. It would probably be a lot of like the 90s snacks. So like I was really into Squeeze-Its. There was like a liquid drink called Squeeze-Its. I don't know if you guys had that. I was addicted to those things. I freaking love those things. But yeah, what else? The 3D Doritos. Those were so good. What else? What else from the 90s snacks are now discontinued? There's so many. But yeah, I would just say the 90s snacks.
Snacks. That's a good choice because yeah, I'm thinking back and some of the best chocolate bars were from the 90s.
What were your favorites?
I don't know if you had them over there, but because Cadbury wasn't as big over there as it is here, and there was one called the Cadbury Slab. And it was like a brick of chocolate.
Oh, yum. Sounds like my kind
solid.
of chocolate.
Yeah.
I don't think we had that over there, but if we did, I'd be all over it.
Well, anyway, like I said earlier on, we're doing things a little different to the norm today, and no doubt my fascination with people like Tara will see a few other people like her come on the show and talk about what they do. And Tara, you're one of those people that really lifts my spirits when I'm having a shit day. I know that at lunchtime at work or whatever, I can just sort of open my TikTok. There you are, picks me up. So thank you so much for all that. And thanks for being silly and fun online. It's great.
Yeah. Well, that makes me happy to hear. And it's awesome to connect with you and to go on your show.
Well, thanks so much for being here. And look, it's great meeting new people and getting new perspectives on things like this. So we are going to do it a little bit more often with a lot of other people who are in a similar position to you. And perhaps sometime down the line, we can maybe get you back on to sift through more 90s stuff. But for now, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Sweet. Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Adam here from Adam's Just Seen with another Good Movie Monday recommendation. We are doing the 90s. What is my number one film of the 90s? Look, I'm just going to go for it. It's Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Now, I am obsessed with this movie. I can't get enough of it. There are a bunch of movies that I love from the 90s. Fight Club's my favorite movie, right? Like, just hands down. But I got to be true. I got to be true to my soul. I got to be true to Arnold and James Cameron, who just took the concept that I already loved in Terminator 1. And I know that there are these people out there that do the T1 versus T2 as they do the Alien versus the Aliens, but T2 rocks, man. And the idea, too, as well, that Cameron could take the villain of the first film and then turn him into, arguably, or inarguably in my case, the greatest father figure in movie history is just so rock and roll. Cameron is a dude that we have seen time after time just have the craziest imagination, and T2 basically represents the first time, I think, in cinema history that a dude with an imagination of his caliber was just given a shitload of money and no constraints. Anything that he could imagine, he had the craftspeople and the money around it to bring it onto the screen. And so what we get is action sequence after action sequence after action sequence that just keeps topping each other, and just every single time I see it, it blows my wig off. I'm jumping on the couch Tom Cruise style. I fucking love it. Everyone in this cast is so on their game. Linda Hamilton is the most badass bitch in cinema history in this. Sorry, Sigourney. My God, Sarah Connor just rocks so hard in this. The brilliance of having this panther-like liquid metal Terminator up against Arnie's big tank. The Robert Patrick performance is just incredible. It gave me nightmares when I saw it. I still remember to this day, right? There are a lot of movies that were way above my pay grade when I was a kid, and I wasn't allowed to go and see them, and my father would. Now, he was really never been into movies as much as I am. And I remember him coming back from Terminator 2, and I'm like, Dad, what was the movie like? And he's like, son, the guy's the floor, and then he's not the floor, and then he's liquid, and then he stabs people. And like my childlike imagination just went apeshit with that concept. I'm like, what are you even talking about? And so it wasn't until I got a beat up secondhand copy from Video Easy that I actually saw what they were talking about. Now, I have had the luxury of being able to see this film on the big screen, honestly, maybe about 5 or 6 times now. If it is playing, I start running. I am going. I will never, ever turn this film off. I've been in the pub before, and it came up on the corner telly, and everyone in the pub just stopped, sat there, and watched this whole goddamn movie. That's the pulling power of T2. T2 cannot be topped. It is the best science fiction movie. It is the best sequel. It is the best action movie. It is the best Arnold movie. I'm gonna go and watch it now. I've revved myself up too much. But the only sad thing about T2 for me is that we didn't get the T3 that we deserved. I mean, we've had a lot of Terminator sequels. Glenn will probably defend them, but every time, because of this high watermark, I'm just so sad that I haven't got to revisit that world. You know, the metallic hues, that incredible score, and yeah, just that bone-crunching action, you know. And the film, I mean, look, I've listened to every audio commentary. I've watched every behind-the-scenes things that I can. Cameron's got this thing too as well with his intricate world building where he can explain every concept as well. Like every little detail, he's like, oh yeah, the Terminator moves this way. He does that. He weighs this much. Like he's really thought that shit out. And that's why it's just an absolute all-timer for me. Like some just off the top of my head, other films that I just cannot get enough of from the 90s: Boogie Nights, Goodfellas, obviously Fight Club. But but look, if I'm in a rut and I need to be elevated by cinema, T2 is where I go to. So if you haven't seen it, I'm not even angry. I'm just so profoundly jealous that you will get to lay your eyes on this film. So go and check it out. This got to be my biggest recommendation for the whole goddamn year. T2, Terminator, Judgment Day.
All right. Well, even though we spent a whole lot of time recommending movies from the 90s just before, I reckon we recommend 2 more. But first, if you want to score a copy of The Faculty on DVD, plus the new release sci-fi horror film 3022 from Eagle Entertainment, then let me know what movie was advertised in the TV spot earlier in the show. Send your entries to glenn@fakeshemp.net, but get in quick because they do get snapped up really fast. But okay, it's here come our recommendations. If you're new to the show, then please join us on the Good Movie Monday Facebook page and share your thoughts about these films. Track them down, give them a look, and see what you think. Mate, I went first earlier. Do you want to take the lead on this one?
Sure. This week, I wish I'd have chosen a film from the 90s. I have no idea when this film was made, but I think it was in the 2000s. And I think I've recommended some of his films before. Luc Besson is one of my favorite filmmakers. He makes phenomenal films. And this week, I'm recommending one of his later films, Angel A, or Angela, depending on how you want to say it. It stars Jamal Debbouze, who's married to one of the hottest newsreaders on the planet, and Rhea Rasmussen, the supermodel that you may or may not remember from a sizzling encounter in the Brian De Palma film Femme Fatale.
Excellent inflection on sizzling.
Sizzling. Basically, they're both Jamal and Angela are on a bridge in Paris, about to kill themselves for various reasons. Jamal is there because he owes some nasty people a lot of money, and you don't really know why Rhea Rasmussen is there, but basically he's about to kill himself, but then he sees her and freaks out and runs and basically saves her from killing herself. So she decides to thank him. She's going to become his kind of guardian angel, and then the rest of the movie is kind of like a after hours-esque romp through Paris, the Paris nightlife, and it is just it's an exceptional film, and it's it's heartwarming as well. Like, it's not your kind of typical Luc Besson kind of high octane action movie. It's just a really kind of nice drama, but it does have kind of some action elements in it.
I also love Luc Besson, but I have not seen that one, so I'm going to add that to my list, hopefully over the next week. I want to watch it.
It's excellent. I highly recommend it, as I have just done on the show.
I think I've said before on the show, I'm particularly fond of the movies that Luc Besson produces these days. I just think there's a little bit more meat to the stuff he produces and the stuff he directs these days anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here we go. This is a film that I've spoken about several years ago on the podcast. In fact, I may have recommended it then, but I think that it's a film that it's a definition of underground cult film, and it's generally forgotten by most. It's from the 90s. It is Adam Rifkin's The Dark Backwoods, starring Judd Nelson, Bill Paxton, James Caan, Wayne Newton, and Lara Flynn Boyle. And now this is what good midnight movies should be, if such a thing still existed. So Judd Nelson plays a garbage man who is an amateur stand-up comedian, but he's possibly the least funny man on earth. But with the encouragement from his psychopathic best friend, who is Bill Paxton, playing a complete dickhead, he perseveres. He gets booed off stage every night. But then when he suddenly grows a third arm out of his back, he discovers his niche and becomes a sudden overnight success. And Wayne Newton is hilarious in this one. He plays the talent manager who spent his entire career looking for a three-armed comedian. And it is surreal. It's nightmarish. The Dark Backwood demands your attention. It is an amazing theatrical poster. If you probably know the poster more than the film itself. And Adam Rifkin has never been better than this one.
I've never heard of this film, and it shocks me that I haven't, because it sounds absolutely amazing.
And when he grows his arm, it begins with like he's got a lump on his back, and he thinks it's like a malignant tumor, and his doctor is James Caan, and his doctor sort of covers it up with gauze or whatever. But when he takes the gauze off a few weeks later, there's fingers, and suddenly this arm just grows out of his back. It's phenomenal. Bill Paxton. It's an R-rated film because it's very. I think Bill Paxton is a necrophiliac, if I'm not mistaken. He finds a corpse when he's at the dump, and he fucks it. And that's supposed to be fun. It is funny, but
This
you would.
sounds absolutely amazing. I'm like I said, I'm shocked that I've never heard of it, and it
looks good. I would desperately love to see this as a midnight movie, like at a theatrical screening. But anyway, so there we go. There's our recommendations. Good stuff, mate. We've reached the end of the show, and we haven't even scraped the surface. We hope you enjoyed the show. How about we continue the conversation online? So head over to our Facebook page or YouTube channel and share some thoughts on your favorite 90s movies with us in the comments section below this episode. Muchas gracias to Jarrett, Guillermo, and Adam, and also those Kentucky legends from Bonehead Weekly. Cheers to you, Ben, for riding shotgun. That was a bit of fun.
It was indeed. I had a great time. I'm looking forward to covering more 90s films in the future.
Yeah, I think we might have to dedicate an entire month to the 90s.
I'm down with that.
And most of all, thanks to you for listening. Please help us promote the show by sharing it on your socials. Don't forget to look out for our midweek videos. On Tuesday, I'll be doing Rapid Fire with Tara Kerr. And then on Thursday, Ben and I will be doing another round of Spitball. And this week, we're going to leave you with a great song called Ripper Soul by Stomp. And it's from the Tank Girl soundtrack. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next Monday.